We're going to talk today a little bit about what you must know about migrating to Office 365 GCC or GCC High for doing business with law enforcement, government, and most importantly, defense. Give me 1 second here. We're going to get our video shared out. Fantastic. There we go. Excellent. All right. So again, if you're in defense, if you're in government, if you're in law enforcement, does not matter. This webinar will apply to you. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live. Very excited to have you. We're going to talk about a couple things. One, we're going to talk about understanding Azure Government versus Azure Commercial. So that is Microsoft's cloud. They call it Azure. And we're going to talk about Office 365 GCC or GCC High. What on earth could the difference be? In case you don't know what GCC stands for, it stands for Government Community Cloud, and it is a dedicated enclave that Microsoft has created specifically for high levels of compliance and law enforcement, defense, even the government themselves. And again, it's an enclave, right? So you have Azure Commercial and Office 365 Commercial, and then they have these various product offerings to assist with varying levels of information security and compliance. And we're going to talk about what does it take to migrate, from wherever you may be to a GCC or GCC High solution. It's not quite as simple as flip the switch. I wish it was, but we'll talk a little bit about what does it actually take to migrate? What does it take to make the move, as we like to say? And we'll also tell you a little bit about our done-for-you approach and how we go about solving the problem. There's some clients that, contact us and they've tried to sort of do it themselves, and they're very surprised about, hitting some of the roadblocks, speed bumps, and challenges that they do hit whenever they try to do a migration themselves. Again, it's a little bit of an oddball situation whenever you're dealing with compliance and secure systems, and even some of the most seasoned IT people and companies really run into some pretty significant challenges. I think the other challenge really is just that there's not a lot of support for this system out there. It's not widely used. And so, Microsoft support can be challenging to navigate if you can even navigate it at all. And vendors, you might think, okay, I'll just go use a migration tool, but it really doesn't work like that. There are just so many nuances and sort of security brick walls that you wind up hitting that, without a lot of experience, and having done this before, it really can be an incredible challenge. So let's go. Let's try to get this thing solved. We'll try to pack as much value in and try to be as time sensitive as we can. We'll start by understanding compliance requirements. So why did Microsoft, go and make this separated enclave? Why is GCC High a thing? And why, in a lot of cases, are you mandated by law to go to it if you're not sort of hosting your own infrastructure, which nobody wants to do anymore when it comes to email? It's just the most problematic thing to host on localized servers. So ultimately, the reason why all of this exists is because the number one threat to national security is cyber attack. And some information just ultimately needs to be in a safe place. As I always sort of tell people, to meet government information security standards, Microsoft has specialized products and service lines which are required to meet certain compliance and cybersecurity standards. Here's the deal. When security is paramount, commercial just won't cut it, even according to Microsoft. Microsoft is a big global company, and they leverage that. They use a support model that's called follow the sun, which means if the sun's up in that part of the world, that's where your support's coming from. Well, if you've got sensitive United States specific information like law enforcement information, defense information, government information, that's not acceptable. That's not it's not okay for the enemies or other countries where data centers exist to have access to our government stuff. So ultimately, when security is paramount, the first thing to understand is the commercial sort of widely used Office 365 and even hosted Exchange email, it's not going to cut it, right? So by producing a whole separated enclave, Microsoft's publicly acknowledging that you really need something more to be secure. These standards were created and later added to the law in an effort to protect America's softest target from attack, Okay, and that's you, right? If you're sitting on this webinar, you may be a small to mid-sized organization. You might even be a smaller government department who's with us today. And ultimately, you may not have a huge, massive IT budget to host your own email servers, your own SharePoint and Teams infrastructure. In a lot of cases, even if you did, it just wouldn't make sense. It makes sense to let Microsoft, the makers of this stuff, handle it. So these standards were created, later added law, ultimately to protect you, because they know you're going to outsource this stuff. They know that you really don't want to have to deal with the day-to-day management of it. But yet the widely used commercial versions are just too big and insecure to really be effective for you. There's always a question whenever I talk with anybody about, why you need GCC or GCC high. And the answer is that Microsoft actually has really, really nicely laid this out. A guy named Richard Wakeman over at Microsoft, great guy, puts out a lot of great information. I actually once asked somebody who was, a writer in NIST SP 800-171. I said, hey, can you get me an answer on whether or not I have to move my clients to GCC high because they need to be DFARS compliant? And if kind of an interesting thing happened, he sort of disappeared for a few weeks and then came back with this reference. I think basically, he actually went and kind of met with Microsoft and said, hey, we need answers to this, right? People need to understand the example. And so they sent me this link. This was a couple of years ago, far before NIST became law and before DFARS was sort of enforced back in 2017. And it really lays it out very clearly. So if we start going down the columns, commercial, Office 365 is not compliant with DFARS, right? So I think I even have an annotation tool, right? So right here, this guy right here, all right, no. And then if you're in defense or anything that deals with ITAR related information, if you don't know what ITAR is, ITAR is the International Traffic in Arms, and basically it means that if we've got anything related to our national security or defense, it cannot fall into foreign hands. Well, the challenge is that Office 365 commercial is, it's supported globally. Again, it's supported globally, and because of that, ultimately, when it comes to ITAR information, you can't just have, very sensitive, information that are, could be national secrets, could be, defense related type stuff. You just can't have that kind of intellectual property sitting out there in a commercial area where anybody can get to it. And again, Microsoft support people do have access, to varying degrees to your accounts where they're supported. They would have to in order to be able to help you and support you. Next one down is going to be CUI or CDI, or covered, controlled unclassified information, subject of NIST SP 800-171 and CMMC, and CDI, which is covered defense information. Those are also a no, not allowed in commercial, not acceptable. And then you get into all kinds of other really fun stuff. So 800-171 is a no. 53, which is the government's version of the standard, that is a yes. It is okay, but again, for controlled unclassified information, it's a no, and all kinds of other stuff. Here's the real key, though, right? Where's the customer support? Global is also in GCC. We'll get into that in a second. And then is it commercial Azure or is it government Azure? So again, for these reasons, if you're handling CUI, if you're handling any of the CGIS information for law enforcement, ultimately commercial just won't cut it. Microsoft publicly acknowledges it. I think it's important that you know that. When we go over to this column right here, right? So talking about GCC, you would think, hey, look, if it's anything government related, GCC is going to be just fine. The challenge is that is actually not correct. It turns out GCC is really it's an enclave of the commercial cloud. So again, if we kind of look down here under directory support, again, commercial is again, it's in the commercial cloud with everything else. Also global. So the support is global, which means people over in foreign countries, potentially including our enemies, would have access to that information. So one other note over here on the NIST 800-171, I know that newer versions of this graphic may have like a bunch of asterisks and then the word yes by it. I can assure you those asterisks really translate into a whole bunch of exceptions, particularly if you're a defense contractor, that essentially say, hey, look, if you're handling CUI, you really still can't use commercial. So I know that they have updated this a little bit. They may have a yes with a whole bunch of asterisks. Still, if you're in defense, not going to work for you. If you're in law enforcement, you're handling sieges, not going to work for you. Again, I think there are some people who have sort of limited use scenarios where it might potentially be okay. So what is GCC for? Well, it may be for departments of the government use where ultimately, security is less of a factor. So for instance, yes to DFARS, but you can't have ITAR. And ITAR is actually, ITAR is a type of CUI, okay? So a lot of people don't know that, but ITAR is a type of controlled, unclassified information. And so that's why there's so many stars here. Again, the real reality is I don't think GCC is really a very safe alternative if you're in defense. I think I would actually, and we do actively instruct our clients, don't do it. Interestingly, you'll see CONUS and you'll see US in CONUS. What does that mean? Well, CONUS stands for Continental United States, okay, CON-US. All right, and then you have US in CONUS, which means that this could be going outside of the continental United States. There are some compliance areas where that's very significant. Again, great information to really kind of understand. Again, ITAR is a no, CUI is a no, and therefore GCC is just not, it's not acceptable for defense either. Lower levels of the DoD SRG level here. And then of course, you've got your NIST 800-171, which again, it was no. Nowadays, you'll see yes with a bunch of asterisks. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I still think this is really just, it's not safe. Why is it not safe? We'll get into this a little bit later, but ultimately, the reason is because making the move into a GCC or GCC high is expensive. All right, it's time consuming. There can be some downtime. It's not a small thing to move into. So for that reason, again, this really is a critical decision as far as which one of these you go into. Then you have GCC high. Okay, GCC high starts to have a couple of things be different. Number one, your customer support is US and it's restricted US. Okay, they screen all the personnel. Second is you're now into a completely separate, isolated system, the Azure government system. It is all US based. And because it is all US based and only US restricted personnel, guess what? We start getting to some yeses, right? I always say GCC high is when no becomes yes. So again, 800-171 and 53 are yeses. CUI is a yes. First time we see that. ITAR even is a yes. And DFARS is a yes. And again, this goes from FedRAMP moderate to high and things like that. So again, DoD, I won't really spend a lot of time. This is very specific to inside the government or a DoD government agency. Yes, we do help with that at On Call. If you have questions, what I'd say is, reach out to us. We certainly can help. But I think for this audience, again, GCC high over here is probably about as intense as we need to go, and probably what's going to apply to the general audience here. So again, GCC high, really the biggest thing is it is DFARS compliant without a bunch of crazy asterisks, and ITAR yes, CUI yes. Why are those things significant? Well, because compliance itself is pass or fail. You're either compliant or you're not. So the last thing you want to do is go through all this effort to migrate to GCC only to find out you're in the wrong system. Bad stuff. Cool. So again, if you fall under one of these scenarios, commercial 365 is a no-go and a migration will be needed. Do I really need to make the move? One, if you have a contract with the DoD, yes, you're required by law to comply with DFARS 7012, even if it's not written in your contract via the Christian doctrine. As we all know, Christian doctrine law in 1963 that basically came out and said, hey, look, certain articles of public procurement are so critical that they're deemed to be law, whether they're in your contract or not. They're deemed incorporated into your contract, whether they're written there or not. It's just simply public procurement policy. That's what happens when you do business with the government. There are some rules to that. So if you have a contract with the DoD, again, yes, you must be DFARS compliant with all DFARS regulations. And that also translates directly into, the DFARS 7012 clauses about cyber incident reporting and data, from a cloud provider being all US based. Those are all very critical things. If you're a subcontractor under a DoD prime, yes, anyone who does subcontract work under a DoD prime is subject to flow down requirements via DFARS 7012. So yes, you will need to be compliant with DFARS DFARS does include all of those cloud service provider clauses. So I think this is really, really critical, right? If you're in an IT department, you're trying to figure this out, you say, hey, I'm a sub, maybe I'm a manufacturer. Guys, we work with a ton of manufacturers with compliance. The number one thing that I would tell you eagerly is if you're a subcontractor, that Christian doctrine mentioned in number 1 really, really does apply to you, okay? DCMA, or the Defense Contract Management Agency, can absolutely walk in, audit you just as if you were a prime. Again, if you're part of the supply chain, you're part of the supply chain. You're not immune because there's a prime above you. Cool. Law enforcement, yes, if you're required to be compliant with CJIS, commercial Office 365 is not compliant, cannot be used. Yes, we do help small to mid-sized law enforcement agencies. I mean, we'll have large ones too. Generally speaking, they've got internal IT departments. And they can actually sort of get help depending upon their size directly from Microsoft. But if you're less than 500 seats of Office 365 GCC high, guys, that's really, we can really, really save you tremendous time, effort, money, et cetera. Again, I think that's really, our typical crowd are those people who Microsoft won't talk to under 500 seats. That's really who we cater to. Number 4 is government, right? A lot of smaller government agencies also need this help, and government contractors require a sovereign U.S. only solution. When should you start working on this? Well, by law, you're already supposed to be compliant. So if you're looking at this and you're going, oh man, like I definitely fall under all of these, and you really have no plan, highly encourage you, give us a shout. Look, whether we help you or not, at least we can help to look at your situation. And we can provide you with some guidance. And guys, we do that for free. All right. It's kind of a little quick history. I'll take a little sidebar here about On-Call. So On-Call is an 18-year-old managed IT services and compliance firm. We really, really cater to the defense industry. Love our law enforcement. My brother's even in law enforcement, and so it never costs anyone anything to find out how we can help. I would rather you call us then run along, in a non-compliant way, and again wind up in trouble because of that, or even worse, having an actual data breach because you didn't have your stuff set up the correct way. My mission in life is to have cost-effective solutions. We're not trying to kill you. We're not a 6-figure solution. Much to my sales department's chagrin. Look, we're here for the small to mid-sized companies. If you've got 10,000 employees, I'm not going to tell you we won't work with you. We've certainly worked with clients that have 14,000 plus employees, global companies. We do work with companies all over the world on this stuff. But look, if you're a couple hundred employees or less, we're happy to help. All right, it's not going to cost you, a terrible arm and a leg. But most importantly, we want to deliver that help. We want to deliver that knowledge because there's so much craziness going on in the world now with ransomware. And, even governments getting involved in these attacks and things like that, that ultimately all of this really is here for a good reason, which is to keep our information safe and secure. And we just really at On-Call Computer Solutions, we think that's such an important mission that, even if we don't make any money, and can just help guide someone in the right direction, we want to be there for you. So, certainly not going to be the most profitable company on earth, but at the same time, it's going to be something that helps our world. We believe in karma and that kind of stuff. So, again, reach out anytime. Please don't feel like there's going to be salespeople like raining in on you. It doesn't really work like that in our company. We don't really do a lot of sort of outbound advertising. It just doesn't work like that. We can put you in touch with a solutions engineer who is someone who actually can help to solve your problem pretty quickly. Cool. All right. Sorry. Back to regularly scheduled program again. Every time I hit that point, it just sort of brings me back to ultimately what our core mission is, which is rapidly deploying cybersecurity and compliance solutions in a cost-effective way. We're very sensitive to that. Cool. GCC or GCC high, let's talk about it, right? GCC and worldwide commercial personnel support. Okay, so again, support is worldwide. If you have to be DFARS or CJIS compliant, it won't work for you. GCC and Azure Commercial, again, they leverage off of the commercial environment. Even though it's a separate enclave, it is still the Azure Commercial Cloud. GCC as an enclave of commercial, we talk about data residency versus personnel access. Look, even in some cases when the data is in the US, but the personnel who have access to it may be foreign, that could cause a problem. So it's a serious issue in GCC, and you really have to know, you have to know what the constraints are and specifically what you need to be compliant with. GCC high and US only support personnel, again, It's only at the GCC high level and above where you get only U.S. screened personnel, with access to your stuff, access to support you. GCC high and U.S. only Azure government. Basically, again, GCC high leverages off of United States only data centers in CONUS or continental United States. Very critical to understand. GCC high is a segregated system. Again, it's not an enclave in the same data center. It's like a fully separated off data center. US only data residency and personnel access, very critical. GCC high when no becomes yes. Okay, when no becomes yes. Look, I will share with you that if you've got to make the move to GCC, our opinion is you might as well make the move to GCC high. It's pretty much that simple. The cost differential is virtually, it's almost non-existent. Why go halfway, right? Why not just do it the right way? And real quick, I mentioned Richard Wakeman earlier from Microsoft. Again, this is a quote from him. Basically says, if you're affiliated with law enforcement in the criminal justice system, you'll likely require siege adjudication from the FBI or from the U.S. state you're in. If you're affiliated with the Internal Revenue Service or Department of Revenue, you'll likely require IRS 1075 for coverage of federal tax information. If you're affiliated with U.S. defense or military, you'll likely require export controls that include ITAR export administration regulations like EAR. Each one of these requires screened U.S. persons and data residency, sovereignty, and CONUS, continental United States. These are what will direct you to our government cloud offerings and diminish commercial as an option. All right. Very, very soft way of saying there is no other option. All right. Let's call it what it is. If you want to be compliant, you're really pretty much going to GCC high. And as I always say, GCC high is when no becomes yes. So again, it's when CUI and CDI says yes. If you're in the defense industry looking at CMMC, again, CMMC levels 3 through 5 become yes. ITAR and EAR becomes yes. DoD, DRG levels above 2 become yes. SIEGES for law enforcement, NERC and FERC for energy. Again, if those terms are in any way relevant, you'll know what they mean. If you don't, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. So again, our friend Richard Wakeman again kind of chimes in. He says, look, it is important to note that while cost and risk are prime decision criteria for our customers, in other words, we understand cost is always an issue, but so is risk. Many also consider future changes to their business strategy and scope of competition. Our government cloud offerings are segregated environments where it is neither a short nor inexpensive customer project to relocate from one to another. If opportunities arise in the future to pursue business requiring a higher watermark for compliance or a potential increase of work in other regions or industries, you may promote such criteria to assess in a decision of which cloud to choose. Let me break this down. What he's really saying is, hey, look, if there's even a ghost of a chance, right? If there's a ghost of a chance that you're going to need any element of GCC high, go to GCC high. Don't stop halfway at GCC. We've worked with defense contractors who sadly in the past went to GCC thinking that's all they needed, didn't want to overcomplicate things with the extra security in GCC high. Sure enough, they wind up, getting, one of their sales guys hits a home run, nails a defense contract, and boom, now they fall under DFARS. So again, I would just really encourage you that I think, my personal interpretation of this, ultimately is, hey, look, if you're going to go on and you're going to make the migration, just go full board to GCC high. Again, I think the licensing cost differential is negligible. And again, obviously, Richard Wakeman over at Microsoft says the same thing. Christian doctrine, let's talk about it. It's in your contract, even if it's not. If you're doing business with the DoD, even as a subcontractor, by law, you are subject to the laws governing doing business with the DoD. Interesting. Since 1963, courts have held that certain clauses are so integral to public procurement that they are deemed incorporated by operation of law, even if they're omitted from the contract. Isn't that interesting? So what that means is if you have a contract and it falls under quote unquote defense, then what that means is all of this stuff applies to you. So as I always say, it's in your contract, even if it's not, and both the FAR and DFARS are covered by the Christian doctrine. Because of that, if you're doing business with the DoD, guess what? This falls under you. What are my alternatives, right? What if a full-blown migration to GCC high is not ideal? What if I have on-premise exchange? What happens if I, have, Gmail? What are my alternatives here? So there's still a few alternatives to a full-blown migration to GCC high. Number one, on-premise exchange. You can host and run your own exchange server. I think the challenge with that is multifold. Number one is I don't think any particular Windows server really fails or has more maintenance required than an exchange server. And that's my personal opinion after 20 years in IT, particularly IT security and server management. But I will tell you that at on-call, we will not take on a client with a local exchange server because it's such high overhead to maintain those things and because they are attacked so often. So if I can pawn that off on Microsoft to manage, amen, that's what I'm doing. And to the extent that we have thousands and thousands of mailboxes that we manage, and not a single one of them is hosted on premise. As a matter of fact, actually, if we take on a client that has an on-premise exchange server, even in defense, and we don't have a 90-day roadmap to move them to GCC high or some other alternative outside of a local server on their local network that can easily be attacked, we won't take them on as a client. So that's how strongly we feel about that. Again, it's one of those things that Microsoft does very, very well. It's their solution. And it's one of those challenges that, email is so vital to the business or to the agency that, downtime is it's really just not an option. And if it is, something you want to manage on premise, hey, I applaud you, go for it. One way you can definitely still be compliant is by doing an on-premise exchange server. There exists some patchwork solutions like Prevail. All right. Now, look, I'll tell you, we're independent. Okay. So Prevail is one way that they say you can get compliant. I think the challenge with Prevail is that there's a significant risk of user error. Okay. I'll be happy to say this is my opinion, but again, there are certain procedures you have to follow in order to make sure that the email goes out of the secure version of the box versus the non-secure version of the box. And look, I think Prevail is I don't really know Prevail that well. I assume they're a great company. We tried recommending them. We got, some negative feedback. Ultimately, again, I look at it as a patchwork solution. Your main mailbox is still not acceptable for DFARS information, for CJIS, for law enforcement, et cetera. And maybe there's sort of like a gray area where they can be compliant, or maybe they are compliant in that part of the solution, but your main email box is still not. I just really, having again managed thousands and thousands of users, and being at this point kind of a compliance and cybersecurity expert, the one thing everyone knows is you can't control what your users click on, which means if you give them a solution where they could make a mistake, they will, and it's only a matter of time until you have a data leakage issue. So that's my challenge with those guys. Again, it's nothing personal. I'm sure they're a great company, but after being a completely sort of vendor neutral solution, again, I'm sure there's also probably other solutions in Prevail. I just happen to sort of call them out because they advertise in the defense industry, and we're very familiar with their solution. We actually even frankly tried them, and there's just a lot of challenges with it. The other big challenge is it requires installation for every device used. Or logging into a separate gateway, plus user downloads for your recipients, which some organizations refuse. Again, I think the big challenge is we kept hearing that, clients would install it, and then the government agency they communicated with would not allow for the installation of whatever it is that was needed to receive the email. I don't know if they fixed that yet. But again, to me, it's still just patchwork stuff. Your email would not be compliant. Prevail might be, but that's not, the total solution. And again, a lot of leeway for some data leakage and data to be in the wrong place. Can you migrate yourself? Absolutely. And if you want to take, 2.5 years to perfect that and get it right, like we did with a team of 6 dedicated professionals, all I can tell you is go for it. The average person that is doing a migration to GCC high takes between 12 and 18 months. That's what we found. Surveying our clients that have come to us, try to do it themselves. We work with people who are successful and still want us to look over the security settings and make sure that part's compliant. Can you do it yourself? I think you can do a lot of things yourself. You could probably build a Ferrari yourself if you had enough time. But as things move along the speed of business, I think that ultimately, if you were supposed to be compliant 3 years ago, back in 2017, it's 2021. You're staring down the barrel of, increased government audits, DCMA, DCSA. These folks are actively auditing defense contractors. again, I just don't think there's really time to waste. I'll tell you, it even takes us between 6 and 12 weeks to migrate a client. It takes 2 weeks alone just to get the licensing from Microsoft in most cases, and we're a well-oiled machine. Again, we have a pretty sizable team dedicated to migrating folks from wherever they may be over to Office 365 GCC High. So can you do it yourself? I'm sure you can. And if you want to spend 6 to 7 figures in talent, potentially 6 to 18 months getting that done, go for it. God bless. I think you can do anything yourself. I believe in you. You can do nothing. And you can risk major penalties such as false claims, contract revocation, blacklisting, and other penalties. Again, this is like core DFARS compliance, CGIS compliance, American FERC in the energy sector. Guys, security is the #1 hot button issue, across the United States government. They're auditing for it. They're not playing around. Again, they're shutting people down. They're suing people. They just have to get this country to the point where the vendors and the contractors understand that they have to be secure in what they do. And so in my personal opinion, doing nothing is really not an option. But there's something even more significant there, if you ask me. All right. And I think it might, again, I might kind of take a little left turn, so bear with me here. I think it boils down to why we do what we do at On-Call. At On-Call, our belief is that it's our civic and national duty to help protect this country. It's what we're all about. It's what we stand for. And I think, if you're trying to sort of take a shortcut, or if you just don't sort of understand this stuff, or if you're the type of person that, maybe just goes, I'll never get audited for that. I think maybe a little bit of reflection and maybe a little education, which is what we hope to do as a part of this, would be helpful in just understanding that, this isn't stuff that the government just like dreamt up one day and said, hey, let's just go put some more requirements on these guys because they don't have enough to do. This is put in place specifically because other solutions on the market are not secure enough to do government business with. All right. And, they're not secure enough. It's openly understood. It's not secure enough for the United States. And I personally think, I don't mean to be on a soapbox or anything, but I think it's your duty as an American to understand, where does this stuff come from, even if you're non-technical. And, if you're not willing to do your part to help secure our country, then I don't think you should do business with the government. I think that, that's my personal opinion. You can, leave a comment below, right? If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about that. But, ultimately, it's my personal opinion that it's your duty as someone who is taking money from the government or is as a part of the government to simply do the right thing, right? I promise these kinds of standards don't get put into place without a whole lot of thought and vetting by a lot of people. So again, I really think it's worth taking just a quick dive off into the emergency lane for a second to discuss that, because this is not a save $1 or $2 issue. You go, let's say you're a small defense contractor, right? You build up a $2, $3, $4, $5 million business, all right, on a small scale, or even hundreds of millions of dollars on the large scale. And, you got families that you're feeding with your business. All right. Or if you're a government agency, you've got countless people's data that may be flowing across your system. And all the government's asking you to do is just take some reasonable safeguards to protect it. And if you're not willing to do that, then what you're really saying is, I'm happy to put $1 of profit above the safety and livelihood of the people that work for me. And I feel that strongly about it, because after meeting with hundreds now of government contractors, working with them, look, I think there's nothing about this that's so expensive that it's going to put you out of business, right? It scales with how many people and licenses you need. And I just really do feel pretty strongly that, at a certain point in time, if you're not going to do the right thing, well, then you shouldn't have sensitive information on your networks, and you shouldn't be doing this line of work. If you feel the need to sacrifice profit for security, go find some other line of work. Sorry, I'll get down off my soapbox now. Why is migration a big deal? GCC and GCC High are isolated environments. This means you can't just relicense a current mailbox in a commercial Office 365 tenant. I wish Microsoft would do that, but it just doesn't work like that. Any move to these platforms requires migration unless you can throw away everything. Okay. So yes, you can call us up. We can get you some Office 365 GCC High or GCC licenses, and we can license you out, and you can take nothing with you and start all of your inboxes over again. Generally speaking, that's really not an option for most people. If it is, great, call us up. We'll help you find, licensing, help you get that in place, and things like that. But generally speaking, it's pretty hard to just like throw away all your email, right? You got years of history there. And sometimes we can do that partially. So we're one of the only companies I know of that'll do a partial migration. But, again, it is a big deal. It is a rip and replace. It is starting over again. And so migration is a big deal. Any migration of email is a big deal. Any migration Office 365 already requires extensive planning, complex technical IT expertise beyond basic or mid-level help desk and server management. Few people have ever done more than one migration or have the extensive experience necessary to understand all of the various migration options and nuances specific to your current situation. Guys, we've been migrating email since before Office 365. I mean, we've done every kind of migration I can think of. And we literally have a purpose-built department, purpose-built training to be able to do this. It is not just sort of flip a switch or buy some licenses. Setting the right expectations is key to keep end users happy. It's absolutely critical if you want to keep your job, right? Let's just call this what it is. You make a move to Office 365 GCC High and don't prepare your users, and there are going to be some unhappy executives. Boy, let me tell you what, and I'll give some examples of some of those sort of potholes that you can hit as we go along here. But the bottom line is that, and I'm a CEO, right? So I'm a CEO. I don't like unexpected work interruptions. All right. Every minute of my day is typically scheduled out. All right. I work, beyond an 8-hour day. I sometimes work beyond a 9 or a 10-hour day. I work if I'm on an airplane. Sometimes I work in a car. An interruption to that workflow can be absolutely devastating to not just me, but my company, and our future as an organization. I am no different than any other CEO or executive or government agency leader out there. So setting the right expectations to keep end users happy is absolutely critical. Guys, I got like a 13 or 20 page guide that we send over when we do migrations just to help the IT person set the right expectations. There's that much to it. A couple of really cool things on that topic, right? Let's talk about a few absurd quirks of GCC and GCC High migrations, because they really are absurd. First off, there's currently very few vendors authorized to sell GCC and GCC High licenses. You can't just buy it direct from Microsoft. So the price variation is much more extreme than just sort of going out and buying commercial Office 365. It's kind of like buying a car. You might have a 2020, I don't know what you're into, maybe a GMC SUV. I don't know. That SUV may be one price on one lot, one price on another with the identical mileage, color, features, etc. But because they got one and you got the other, it just winds up at a completely different price. When you've only got 20 or 25 people who are not big, giant, super well-known companies out there, price variation happens. Another classic that we love to help clients with is not everybody knows that you can do a partial migration. So some vendors won't quote you on various levels of licensing. They just won't. They won't tell you that's even an option. So some people will tell you can buy a license and not do a migration, or do a partial migration, or just buy a handful of licenses. You may even need guidance on creating an enclave so you don't have to license out your entire organization. You may be able to just, seemingly carve out who needs to be in the secure enclave of people who need GCC High. There's a lot of ways to go about this, and that's one of the reasons why price variation can really be extreme in terms of how you go about solving this problem. Steps to purchase licenses, set up and secure an Azure government tenant, and just get the basic functionality going can take weeks of daily management of the process. It's so easy to drop balls and experience process delays. I mean, we have a service ticketing system. I think we probably have like 20 to 30 tasks that we have to complete just to get the licenses in the tenant. Again, I wish it was as easy as just whipping out your Amex card and buying some licenses, but it's not. So again, we do have a way that the first step that we usually do is we do a tenant setup, and we and we do a licensing walkthrough. We help people to navigate that because that part is complex. Not getting security settings and set up correctly can put your entire organization at risk and may still have you operating without being in compliance, even after all this effort to move into the right system. So let me just make sure that we get this straight. Just because you put your stuff in GCC high doesn't mean that you're compliant. It just means you're in that environment. Then you got to make the environment compliant, right? And the challenge with GCC high is, both GCC high and Azure are these environments where there's a lot of variability because it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all type of situation. They've got to have one environment that can be compliant, but that can be customized to meet all needs. So, again, you can make all this effort and still wind up not being really fully compliant to the letter of the law. A couple more, right? Because we got some more, right? Unlike most other common migrations, moving to Office 365 GCC or GCCI is full of pitfalls, potholes, gotchas, and you got to be kidding me moments backed by virtually unreachable support and clear as a lead curtain setup steps. Hey, I dare someone to list in my comments here, I dare you to list a direct phone number for getting a hold of anyone who will support a regular client in the GCC high environment. Do it. I promise. We would love to get that phone number out there. I haven't found one yet. It is just an absolute bear to work with Microsoft support. All right. It's a big, giant, massive global company. And, they're interested in selling software licenses. Ultimately, I think their support is fine. But one thing that I think is a little absurd is that Microsoft wants somewhere around $15,000 for an IT company just to gain direct access to their support outside of their email ticketing system. So if I, as an IT company, want to be able to call Microsoft for support, typically you have to be a direct bill partner, and you have to jump through about 1 million hoops, and you got to be already somehow be selling a massive amount of money in licensing, and maybe if you're lucky, they'll allow you the privilege of paying about $15,000 to get some support. It really is just one of these really wild things. Here's another example of a gotcha, right? Sometimes you go make a setting change in Office 365 GCC high, and it just doesn't work. It just straight up fails, right? It doesn't work. You come back the next morning and try it again, it'll work just fine. Zero explanation, no idea why that happens. Again, I'm not going to dive into my personal gripes. Our team knows how to solve all those things, but really, there are just some weird moments that, unless you've done this, about 50 times, you just really wouldn't believe what it takes to get it done. Some things just don't make sense with it. The average organization takes between 6 and 18 months to migrate on their own if they have a full-time multi-person IT staff. The sheer manpower cost of migration alone is daunting, and the entire process is highly frustrating, right? Even to our team, it's highly frustrating. Who knows? Maybe someone at Microsoft will see this video and they'll figure out a much, much easier way of doing it. All right. I'd love it if it was an easier process and I did not have to charge my clients, money to do this, but I don't think that's really going to change because, again, Microsoft also, in their defense, has a pretty big challenge, not only making a secure and compliant system, but one that can really accommodate everybody. So it just sort of is what it is. There's a lot of complexity. If you happen to be a CEO or an executive and you're watching this, understand that the typical, I'll call it a tier 2 or even somewhat advanced level of IT person, they've never had to do a migration like this. This is a completely unique, one-of-a-kind system that they're dealing with. Not abnormal for even highly experienced, even security-focused people to really need a lift here. Okay. When it comes to migration, there's 4 different ways to do it. Which one is right for you is specific to your situation, but it's very easy to accidentally choose a much harder path than required. Again, there's multiple different kinds of migrations. There's cutover migrations. There's fade in, fade out. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making that up. But ultimately, again, if you look it up, Microsoft puts out there are several different ways to migrate. Just choosing the right one itself requires pretty advanced level expertise. Migration itself is highly complex. Each one's unique. Some parts still need to be done manually. Average GCC or GCC high migration cost in 2020 was between $1,200 and $1,500 per mailbox, plus the licensing, plus other various one-time setup costs. Yuck, that's expensive. It's one of the reasons why we ultimately decided that as we were helping all of our defense contractor clients with compliance, we saw this problem and we just said, man, this is crazy. There isn't a doubt they have to go to something like this. They love Office 365. Even we're a big fan of it. But, this path to getting in there is just absurd. So, again, we figured out a way to systematize it. It's one of the things we're really, really good at On-Call, is taking very complex things and making them much easier to deal with. And we figured out a way to get that cost down. So, but again, we've seen the quotes, guys. We've seen the quotes from the AOSG partners. We've seen the quotes from people doing this. There's not even that many to begin with. So the market's limited, the price is high. And you know what, we're just seeking to be able to, offer up an affordable solution to get you where you need to be and protect that data the way it should be and the way the government mandates. So because it's government regulated and highly secure, some things just work differently. Okay. Understanding those key differences between commercial and government and working with a partner who knows the answers is critical to success. Okay. Whether you ever, need us or not, we're here to answer some questions. I put us out there because this is something we really, really believe in. We believe in the concept of security. And again, we just think one way or another, working with an experienced partner that understands how to do these migrations, has a lot of them under their belt already, is critical for it being successful and smooth. Cool. Let's talk about how we can help. All right. If you're still with us, you're a champion. Appreciate you spending this much time with us. And if you're someone looking down the barrel, my hope for the rest of this presentation is, again, whether you need our help or not, maybe a little bit of education about how we go about these things might be helpful to you. Again, if it is, hey, give us a thumbs up. If that helps us out with our views and things like that, and we really appreciate it. And at the end of the day, it also encourages us to keep on making these videos and know that we're reaching the right audience. So again, we know it's a little bit of a niche kind of thing, but the other part of it is the information is hard to find. It's a challenge. Cool. So how can we help? Number one, we're, as far as I know, the only company that does flexible a la carte solutions to help you migrate. Okay, you choose the help that you need. Most companies want to come in and quote a price on just doing the migration. Look, if you know how to do the migration, great, or if you just need help in one aspect of it, awesome, we can do it. We want to be cost effective, right? We know it's not just a bunch of large companies doing this. And if you're a large company, don't worry, we've got the expertise to help with it too. And we've got the experience. Doesn't matter how many mailboxes you have. We can help you with preferred vendor selection assistance, okay? Not all Microsoft AOSG partners price equally. It's pretty much that simple. All right. And we are not an AOSG partner, so I can say that. Pre-migration assessment options. Okay. We can actually come in and do an environment pre-migration assessment and really just even give you a clue about what it's going to take in order for you to migrate yourself. So if you really are just a do-it-yourself, or you want to do it, or maybe you're a larger IT department, guys, we can come in and we can help you to understand all of the various pieces. By the way, some of this just simply can't be done with tools. Some of this is a manual move, and knowing what you're getting into before you get into it, I think is probably worth some time spent doing it. We help companies and agencies with the setup and licensing walkthrough options. Okay, so setup of Azure government, walking through the licensing and making sure that goes smoothly. Picking an AOSG partner, again, we can do every bit of that. We also have options for partial migrations. Maybe you have a couple of key executives, but then the rest of the workforce doesn't need to take the email with them. Again, we have a partial migration option. I don't know very many companies that really quote like that. We do. Look, we're just here to help you with what you need help with, if you need any help at all. We also, of course, have complete done-for-you migration options. If you're just kind of getting familiar with on-call computer solutions, we're all about the done-for-you solutions. We get it, right? Like, you're busy, especially if you're in IT. Always good for the executives to hear this. Look, if you're in IT, you're busy, okay? I've never met an IT department that said that they were over-resourced. Think about that. I've never heard of an IT department that has said, we got too much resources, all right? We're well-funded, right? I got more than enough people on our help desk. Never heard that before in my life. Never. Across thousands of organizations that we have helped. I think that ultimately at the end of the day, this is a one-time big lift task. And, it's something that we can come in and work with your team and just simply get it done for you with the level of expertise it takes. So if you've made it this far, I'm sure you're probably wondering at this point, like, hey, Mike, can you really like dive in and let's talk about how this actually gets done. So let's do that, right? Let's take a little deep dive here and let's find out, how can I help? So here's what we offer to our clients. All right. And again, number one is, before we would talk about what we offer to our clients, if you just have a question, call us. It doesn't cost you a thing. I'm really big into that because with any service that you get from our company, we have a presidential no nickel and dime promise. And this is me. All right. This is me personally, Mike Frieder. Look, I hate being nickel and dimed in life. I hate that. It's nothing worse than buying something and then finding out that you need like that one extra widget, that one extra silly add-on. Oh, I hate that. Just give me a price. All right. Just give me a price. Let me buy it. Let me make the buying decision and then I'm done with it. So we don't do that to our clients. If you bought, a migration from us and you've got questions or something like that, we're not going to charge you extra. If you've got questions about your install 6 months later, we're still not going to charge you. As long as, we got to be fair to ourselves. If it takes 15 minutes or less of our time, we don't have to hard schedule an engineer's time for it. We're not into charging like that. Okay. What we're into is helping people. We're all about the relationship. Our thought is pretty simple. You probably have other people you'll come across that could use our services. I'd rather give you a free 5-minute answer and promote some good karma out there in the world, help our country get secure, than sit there and worry about billing out for a fraction of an hour. We're just not that kind of firm. We don't do that. And you know what? Again, maybe in exchange, you'll keep us top of mind if somebody you come across needs help with that too. So again, hit the like button if you like that. We're all about that, right? So we're all in this together. I think if some of these recent ransomware attacks have taught us anything, being secure with our information. This is not just like a one company problem or a one organization problem. This is a national problem. Cool. What do we offer? Number one, pre-migration assessment. First step to any successful migration is to assess the current environment and create a migration plan. Okay. Don't just like go in and start moving stuff. Bad idea, right? It's the fastest way to a trouser fire. You know what a trouser fire is? Trouser fire is when the person who is your direct superior or shareholder, it's when their pants light on fire instantaneously and you start getting yelled at. So we want to try to avoid that. So the first step to any successful migration is to assess the current environment, create a migration plan. During planning, we're going to work with your team to understand your current email, Office 365, Gmail environment. And when I say what we do, by the way, guys, I'm sharing our direct deliverables that we put out there for clients, guys. I'm putting this out there for the world because I think it'll help people. No one wants to put this information out there publicly. I don't care. I will. I believe in karma. And I think that really, we're staring down the barrel of a much, much bigger IT security challenge. So the government has been awesome. They put out these compliance standards. You know what? Hey, I'll match it for one. I'll tell you how to do it. So during planning, we'll work with your team to understand your current email, Office 365, Gmail environment, and what it takes to migrate. We help you determine whether GCC or GCC High is the right choice for you. All right. And again, we've talked a lot about that. Generally speaking, most of our clients need to go to GCC High. It's the right choice for them. We'll help you plan for your licensing needs and explain GCC or GCC High licensing costs. Okay. We'll help you plan for your licensing needs and explain the costs. Again, we're not Microsoft. We don't get paid by Microsoft. I don't get a quarterly incentive. I don't get anything. All right. I don't have an interest in that. All right. We talked to Microsoft about it. And when they laid out the hoops that we had to jump through, I said, look, love you, Microsoft. All right. And we are a Microsoft partner. So full transparency, we're a Microsoft partner. We're an indirect reseller. We're a CSP. We're an LMNOP. I mean, guys, I got more credentials on staff than you can shake a stick at. But here's the reality. All right. Microsoft's making it hard on purpose. And when it comes to security, I'm not really a fan of that. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I don't think that's the right move. I think it makes it a bigger challenge. So you know what? Hey, I know what the price lists look like. I know what the options are. I know what the variances are, in the licensing costs. And so I put together a team that can help educate you on that. So again, we'll help you plan for that. Let's talk about the Azure government setup, right? So once we've kind of got your licensing scoped out, we know exactly what you need. The next thing is Azure government setup. Okay, get help setting up the Azure government environment, including a walkthrough of how to get a $500 free credit with Microsoft. Again, obviously assuming that they're still doing it, we'll walk you through the Azure government free trial process, converting your trial over, all that other good stuff. We'll also offer you a done-for-you setup of Active Directory, custom domains, user accounts, you name it, guys. We'll set it up for you if you need us to, all right? These are just things that we offer. We offer assistance with security best practices, right? Just because you're in Azure or just because you're in Azure government doesn't mean your environment is secure, all right? We'll help you with all the best practices, including setup of Azure multi-factor authentication, password policies, account lockout policies, other security best practices for users to keep them safe, okay? It doesn't come out of the box with all this stuff ready to go. Selection of the right Microsoft AOSG licensing partner, talked about that. Again, they're not all created equal. We'll work with your point of contacts to help set end user and organizational expectations for a successful move. Big, 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 okay? Again, my goal is to make sure that no IT guy that hires us gets fired. And in fact, they become the hero. And if you're an executive watching this, guess what? It's still my mission. IT guys work hard. And people who are out there, you know, on the front lines defending your network, you may not have thought of them as a hero, but believe me, those guys are busting their butt to do the best they can to secure against literally enemy states that are trying to attack them and you and your business that you work so hard to build, or your agency you're working so hard to run. So yes, we're going to work with your point of contacts. We're going to help set end user and organizational expectations for a successful move. And we're going to do everything we can to just make sure that everybody in the organization knows what's going on well in advance. And we're going to work with POCs during the pre-migration process to assist with any special environment variables based on organizational compliance needs. Again, every company we work with, every agency we work with, they have a little bit of a slightly different need. They're moving to this system for one reason or another. Law enforcement, maybe CJIS requirements. You know, if it's not law enforcement, if it's defense, they may have their requirements. One way or another, doesn't matter to me. Ultimately, you know, we will figure out what those requirements are along with you, and we'll figure out what changes need to be made along the way. Again, we'll assist in the license purchase, acquisition, and application process. Literally, guys, we'll write the emails for you. I mean, really, we'll white glove you through the entire process. And, you know, it is not uncommon, I'm sad to say, it's not uncommon for balls to be dropped. Our job is to make sure balls don't get dropped and this thing keeps moving. It's not a one-day job, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. So we keep the ball moving for you. We also perform the Azure government tenant setup. Yes, there's setup required, right? Settings need to be put in place, particularly if we're going to migrate data over. There are things that have to be done, so we take care of that. If we're not the ones taking care of it, all right, if you're watching this video trying to figure out how to do it yourself, again, it's got to be set up, guys. There are variables that have to be changed. There are security settings that need to be reviewed. Multi-factor authentication needs to be added. All those things really need to be put into place. Get assistance converting the Azure government trial converted to paid account. Yes, don't lose your setup, right? Don't lose all the options that you need to make this thing work. We give you assistance converting the Azure government trial converted to a paid account and understanding of Azure billing so you don't lose it later, okay? We help you determine best migration strategy. Again, there's 4 to choose from. Every organization is a little bit different, and we help you to figure that out. We deliver installation of licensing into the tenant and application of licenses to accounts. Yes, you can't just buy the license and it shows up in Azure or shows up in Office 365. Sorry, it just doesn't work like that. There's like a process for actually getting the licenses to work with your tenant. It's unbelievable. I wish it was simpler. Assess and understand migration needs such as OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. All right. There's nothing more fun than migrating a mailbox than finding out that your whole SharePoint environment didn't come with it. So again, we can help you with that assessment up front. We can help you get required current tenant credentials if applicable. You know, again, we do have to make sure we've got credentials into both the old place wherever email came from and the new place it's going. We set up the live cutover date and time and validate migration readiness. So again, we help to organize the exact moment of switchover and everything that's got to happen after that. Because you're not just done when it all goes live. You've still got another 2 weeks of work to go. So again, we coordinate that go live coordination with your team. And again, we're going to be there by your side. Okay. Your team will not have to do this alone, or we can totally do it for you. We handle all the DNS and domain name record transitions and troubleshooting to move email from previous vendor to GCC or GCCI environment. It's almost the first thing that looks kind of normal, like an email migration. I think I might have talked about in the last half hour. But ultimately, again, this is not, even this part is still a little bit different GCC high. Mailbox data verification post-migration, we're going to make sure it all came over okay. Perform mandatory post-migration cleanup activities. Yes, there's a lot of cleanup that has to be done once you are moved. Beyond the migration, this is what we do for our clients. So beyond the migration, we have 60 days of follow-up phone support, okay, post go live, because you need it. Just gonna level with you guys, you need it, okay? You're not done at the time of cutover, right? You might be high-fiving, grabbing a beer, hang tight, it's not over yet. But don't worry, we give you 60 days of follow-up phone support after the cutover. Azure Government and Office 365 GCC and GCC High tenant management plans available to have us manage your Azure Office 365 tenant and keep you secure. Okay. Again, the Azure Government environment is not just like turn it on and forget it. All right. It needs to be managed. There's still a lot of security related stuff, updates, et cetera, that have to go on in there. If you've never managed an Azure environment because you've always been on premise, give us a shout. We can help you out. Ultimately, we do have ongoing management for that to help you. A little bit about our company: 100% US-based advanced email protection and sandboxing to keep you and your users safe from email threats. Are there Microsoft options? Yes. Yes, Microsoft does have options for this. Guess what? Microsoft is not the only one. Okay, we're big fans of solutions like Spambrella and Proofpoint. I think they wind up being more cost effective over time and provide better protection. Now, who's to say who gives better protection? Not me. We support both. We work with both. We're pretty agnostic in that regard, but ultimately, one way or another, you really are going to need advanced email protection and sandboxing, especially if you're in defense, to be compliant. Again, the number one way these attackers are getting off their attacks is through phishing emails. So it's critical to understand that just because you're in GCC high doesn't mean you got the world's best spam filter. It's not even close. Not even close. Office 365 GCC and GCCI backup solutions available to meet your needs. Yes. Remember, guys, backup, and back it up again. Put it in a safe and back that up. Again, users cause accidents with data, right? Like what's the best way to put that? Office 365 GCC high needs to be backed up just like your normal Office environment. Even perhaps more so because again, not all of your typical things may be configured out of the box, like data loss prevention, DLP, and other things that might ordinarily be there to protect you. You need to look at those settings. So again, we do offer a GCC high compliant data backup solution that we can help you with. So, whether you use us or not, doesn't matter to me, but man, you got to have that environment backed up for sure. And then, by the way, what you use to back up has to be compliant as well with whatever you may be trying to get compliant with, DFARS, CGIS, et cetera, NERC. Other cybersecurity and compliance services, yes. All right, I'm going to put in a plug. You got this far with me. I can't help myself. You should know that we are a full-service cybersecurity and compliance firm. We manage IT for thousands of endpoints. We service companies globally. OnCall is an 18-year-old company. And we love to help secure our clients. And the best part is we do it piecemeal, right? We do it on a consulting basis. We do it on an ongoing management basis. We are big enough to be flexible. We are small enough to care. We're small enough to the point where you can still get a hold of really high-level engineers who really do care about this stuff. So again, I would just say to you, if you're looking for that trusted third-party cybersecurity expert, on-call computer solutions can absolutely help with that. Even if you're another MSP, by the way. So let's address that. If you're an IT company, you're looking at this and you're trying to figure out how to do this for one of your clients, guys, no problem. We have a partner program. Okay. We can absolutely help with that. Absolutely help with that. So again, our motivation is really simple. Okay. I care a lot more about national security, trying to help people do the right thing as far as following the laws of compliance than being profitable. I promise we're past the point of profitability. I'll be all right. All right. But if I can help you to be more secure, if you're an MSP, again, I think if there's one thing I've picked up over the years, IT guys got to work together. IT departments need help from time to time. Not everybody can know it all. And, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity, not everybody is an expert, and not everybody really, can focus their time. You may be a mid-sized company with the resources to really you got to keep stuff running too, right? I mean, you're just, you may be flooded or not have enough resources to do anything other than just keep the day-to-day running. So when it comes to actually looking at strategy, again, that's a great place we can help too. Cool. Talking about some next steps. Hopefully you got what you were looking for in this live webinar, this video on YouTube, wherever you may be seeing this. Hopefully, we've been able to provide you with some substantial value, while you've been here with us. If you're ready to dive in, don't worry about all this stuff. These are just kind of stock slides. Here's the important part, though. Okay, let's talk about our phone number for a second. Cool. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. I'll go through all the bullet points. Forget the top 3 bullet points. Okay, guys, I literally, I'm showing you the stuff that we would be, saying to our clients or potential clients if they're coming to us, right? Cat's out of the bag, right? Like the video title says, releasing it all into the wild. Number 1, if you need help, there's our phone number. It's 850-224-1008. Yes, we have multiple offices all over the East Coast. We have clients globally. But there's one of our many phone numbers. They all lead back to the same place. Number 2, if you are interested in getting some help from us, you can call us or you can email us. I put up JC Matthews. JC, I'm kind of probably doesn't know I'm doing this, but I'm calling JC out. JC, I'll let him know after the webinar. JC is one of our senior compliance engineers. The guy's a genius. And ultimately, he is our go-to person for anyone who needs help with any of this. I just really, would say that, look, if you can go out and do it on your own, I want you to go out and do it on your own. Hopefully this video has really helped you. But boy, if you can't do it on your own and you're looking for some help, hey, you know what? If it's 5 minutes, get with JC. JC will get with one of our internal engineers. We'll figure out exactly who the best person is on staff to help you out. If it's 5 minutes, I don't care if you're another IT company or an IT department, we're going to help you guys out, right? Again, we've been very fortunate to build a good sized business over here. We believe in good karma. We believe in what this is really all about, which is helping people to be secure and not be harmed by bad guys, who want to steal our data and break into our systems. So reach out to JC. He can be your gateway. If you want to learn a little bit more about us, couple really cool places to visit. Number 1, the dfars.premeetingmaterials.com. If you're thinking about reaching out and you're kind of like, who's this random jabroni on YouTube, or in this webinar, feel free, go over to dfars.premeetingmaterials.com. It's a great reference site. You can learn a lot more about what we do. Again, we are a really interesting company. We're a special purpose company built to meet the needs of Department of Defense contractors, law enforcement, and government agencies. We understand information security really, really well. We're all about helping people here. It's really kind of where we come from. If you want more information specifically about migrating to Office 365 GCC High, you can go to gcchighmigration.com. Again, great resource. You can learn more. If you are a Department of Defense contractor and you are looking down the barrel of NIST SP 800-171 compliance, DFARS information security compliance, whereas DFARS 7012, 7019, 7020, whatever, even DFARS 7021, which is CMMC, that is a great resource for you. If you're looking to try to get prepared for the upcoming CMMC certification, visit that site. It's got a lot of great resources for you. And again, we just really encourage you to just, reach out. Don't be a stranger. Again, at the end of the day, we got into this because we had a lot of Department of Defense contractor clients who, needed not only, great managed IT support, but they also really needed a higher level of cybersecurity than what the average bear can find locally. Cybersecurity is our passion. We love helping our clients to understand it. We love helping IT departments and other MSPs and this whole audience to really get it, because I'd much rather you get the information that you need than ever fall victim to a ransomware attack or a breach or any of that kind of stuff. It's not fun. Not going to kid you. We've been through it with our clients. Fortunately, the last couple of years, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate, again, because we just obsess over this stuff. And if I can help one person avoid ransomware, if I can help one person make, a GCC high migration easier, then you know what, my day is complete. So again, if we can help you, there's all our contact information. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know your time is very valuable. Hopefully you've gotten a lot out of it. And again, if we can help you, please don't hesitate to reach out and have a great day. Thanks.